Welcome to Senior Speak. I'm your host, Dan Wise. I'm also a volunteer for AARP, which helps to support this show. Giving to charity in your email, in your mailbox, on the street, maybe your neighbor or your grandchild. It seems like every day you will be solicited for a charitable donation. Every year there's Giving Tuesday. It seems like it happens more than once a year now, too. Giving Tuesday, where organizations are inundating you with messages to give to their causes. Today, we're going to talk about smart giving, how to give in a way that relates to your comfort level, and also how to work from the perspective of what works best for the charities you want to support. What are the ways that you can give to charities that will be most effective for them? Because I don't think we really hear that side of things talked about very much. So today, to help me with that, my guest is Alan Cantor of Alan Cantor Consulting. Alan, tell us a little, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, Dan.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about your background, and you advise nonprofits on not just development or fundraising, but also just how to be a better nonprofit, right? Would that be, how do you characterize your consulting?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here, and I am a Concord guy, so it's good to support this effort. I worked for 30 years at 3 different New Hampshire nonprofits. I was an executive director, but mostly I raised money. I was a development guy, development being a euphemism for fundraising. And but for the last soon-to-be 15 years, I've run my own company, working with small nonprofits, yes, on how to run a capital campaign and ask for money. A lot about board governance, which a lot of organizations struggle with, and just some basic strategic decisions. So I have a blast. I've been in and out of like 180 organizations over that time.
Wow.
So and they're in every field. So I kind of have a sense of what's going on out there.
Yeah. So I thought you would be a good person to help me with this topic, because I didn't really see a lot out there what I wanted, because I feel like I have money to give, and I make donations here and there, and then I sometimes wonder if I'm really doing it the right way, and then I also feel like, okay, if another organization comes and I don't give them money and I feel guilty about it, and it's like, I don't want to get psychological or anything, but I just felt like, well, maybe let's talk about charitable giving kind of from a consumerist perspective. So and we're not going to talk about tax planning or things like that. And I'm also kind of thinking there's a lot of everyday giving that we do. Maybe later in the show we could talk a little bit about legacy giving or planned giving, but we're really not focusing on that. Alan's not a financial planner. He's a guy who works with the management of nonprofits, and so he has an understanding of what how they operate best at doing their mission. Because anytime you talk to somebody who's in a nonprofit group, they are focused on their mission. These are not counting bean counter people usually. They're focused on whatever is their mission. That's what they want to do. And so they go to somebody like you to help make sure that they're making the trains run on time, right? Yeah. So how can a charitable donor, what are some ways for them to be effective at giving?
Yeah. First, maybe just to turn the tables and to understand what it's like in the nonprofit world. if you in our audience have worked in a traditional for-profit business, you kind of know in your planning that you have to sell so many widgets or serve so many customers, and then you get enough money to make a profit. There's an exchange of goods and services. In every nonprofit I have known and worked in and worked with, they kind of know what they might be getting, say, from ticket sales or from tuition or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
They might have some government grants or foundation grants they could get, but there's always this piece, and sometimes it's quite significant, sometimes it's a relatively small piece, that comes from individual donors. And they really do not know until the year is over whether they hit their goal. And so they are, I was once working at a place and we had a banker, great guy, nice guy, who was on our board. And as he got older, he was in his, mid-60s, he took the job as our chief financial officer. And he thought this was going to be fun. And he hands me the budget. It was like a $5 million organization. And he said, so it says here, I was in charge of getting money in the door, that you're going to raise $2.5 million. And I say, yeah, that's what it says. He says, you know where that's all going to come from? I said, no. I said, I know where 2.1 million is coming from. I don't know about that 400,000. And all the blood drained from his face. And I said, there's sort of an unwritten part of every nonprofit's business plan, manna from heaven. And you're expecting people to give you money, and some of it are regular donors, some of it is new donors. But it's critical to keep the place going, and as you said, so that the mission can get met. So from the nonprofit side, I don't think any of them like sending you all those emails and those reminders on the Giving Tuesday and the New Hampshire Gives. That's the other one. And
Okay. Yep.
And I have a friend who counts them kind of maliciously. I'm up to 240 appeals. They're doing it because they're trying to meet their mission. And from your perspective as a donor, I think realize that every dollar does matter. I don't think Bill Gates is in the listening audience here. I don't think there are any billionaires among the viewers. But people who can give $25 or $100 matter greatly to New Hampshire nonprofits. So I would say, first of all, one thing you could do is stick with your team. So if you know an organization, you know a person or two there, you support their mission. If you give them $100 last year, give them another $100 this year, and just sort of get it so that's one of the things they could sort of depend on. And not to be cold about the other appeals that come in, but if you have the choice of giving, I'm trying to do the math here, $20 to 100 organizations or $100 to 20 organizations, does that make sense? Is that the same amount of money?
Oh, don't.
Oh, I don't know. We said we weren't financial planners. Go with, I think it's more effective to go with the fewer organizations with the larger amount, if you can. And then just kind of keep them on. And if you've had a really good year, give a little more next year. If things are tight and your kid needs money or whatever, you could drop it down a little.
Because, and now there's a lot of organizations will offer they want you to sign up with a credit card donation on a recurring basis.
Yeah.
And of course, that's one way to sort of automate things.
Yeah, and, if people are comfortable with that, most of us kind of have our monthly budget. And let's say writing a $250 check, a little hard for us, your hand stops. Yeah. But then you say, I could do $25 a month, which actually comes out to more money, $300.
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable with it, that's a nice way to give. And that, again, really provides an ongoing source for the organization. Public radio, of course, kind of pioneered this and does it all the time. More and more organizations are doing it, and I think that's a nice way. My wife and I do this as donors with several organizations, and it's just kind of the dues we pay for living in a great community.
Now, what about brand name organization? Big, the Red Cross or the American Cancer Society versus some local group. I guess it's a matter of choice. But is there any other considerations?
Well, there might be a third group, which is organizations you never heard of who are hassling you on the phone.
Yes.
For money.
Yes.
I mean, that's a big.
Like the American Cancer Victims
Society.
Society.
If you get a call and the name of the organization includes the words cancer, children, veterans, first responders. Did I say cancer? Throw in cancer one more time.
Yeah.
It may well be a scam, especially if you don't know them and if they're calling you and they're trying to get your credit card. I would hang up quickly to those people. Mm-hmm. If it's a cause you care about, Doctors Without Borders, if you care deeply about sort of humanitarian issues, world peace, you can obviously can't do that through a local Concord organization.
Yeah.
So I would encourage, as long as you know who they are and they're legit. But going back to that, if you have a limited amount to spend, if you're a $100 donor or a $250 donor, generally speaking, that money goes a lot further with a small Concord area organization like the Friendly Kitchen. It's direct, it's local, and I won't say $250 is a rounding error for big national organizations, but it is. And one of the things to keep in mind is you want to support a good cause. There's something, you shouldn't feel bad about feeling good about giving. You're part of this relationship. And you and I have been talking that there have been studies about how giving makes you feel good. And if you care deeply about a cause, if cancer has, and I don't mean to make light of cancer, I was just saying to be careful of scamming organizations that use the name. But if you care deeply about cancer or you lost a loved one from a particular disease, and you can contribute something, it makes you feel good, that's good. You're part of this, don't feel bad. I mean, my general preference is for small local organizations where I know what I can give will go further.
Yeah, I see. Good point. Do you have any opinions about things like I don't know if Facebook still does birthday fundraisers or GoFundMe, and I'm trying to think. There's a third. Oh, well, Amazon used to have a charitable arm, which I think has been phased out.
Yeah.
But we still have Facebook fundraisers, and we still have GoFundMe. And I'm not sure if there's other apps or other kind of gimmicky devices or things like that out there that people should know about and know why or why not.
Right. Well, there are a lot of things out there, and some of them I don't know. I'm just finding out about them. I am a longtime member of AARP, so I'm not on the cutting edge of technology. But all of these online giving apps, first of all, some of them are charitable, as is recognized by the federal government. This is a 501c3 public charity. These are the organizations with boards of directors, boards of trustees, mission statement. They're trying to provide some kind of public good. So these gizmos and gadgets sometimes support them. Sometimes they just support a struggling business or a new movie idea. I just sent some money last night to a friend of mine who has a typewriter restoration company. There's nothing charitable about it, but I wanted to help him out.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, and I think this is poignant, it's people whose kid needs a kidney transplant or something, and they've been burned out of their house and they desperately need these funds. So there are a lot of different causes for these. I think a lot of these are what could be called peer-to-peer fundraisers. So, for my birthday, I want to raise money for, and you name an agency. And I think those are fine as a way to honor the person, and the money's going to the organization, presumably. But it's simpler to cut out the middleman and just send the money directly to the organization, generally speaking.
And I guess that's kind of the idea that I was thinking of, is that I'd like to try to be, and I want to encourage viewers to do this too, is to be a little more purposeful in your giving, and rather than sort of just accept what you come along with, just be intentional about it, I guess.
And less reactive.
And less reactive, and maybe it takes a little more thought, a little more work, but although this is something we talked about before the show too, is that you might want to save some of what you put aside for giving for things that come up that you want to participate in, like a friend is doing a charity, a walk for cancer or something like that.
Right. I mean, there are very few people who really budget it out, and I think the world has people who really do have a budget and stick with it, and most of us think we have a budget and we react more spontaneously. I do have a friend who is quite well off, and he brings me in. This is just, I don't get paid for it, and he seeks my advice on who to give to, and he puts a lot of money out the door, and he has a category of responding to friends. So if a friend is riding in the Pedaling for Payson or the Mass Challenge or the NAMI walk, you say, sure, I'll give $100 to support Dan's walk, and it's nice. I mean, generally, and you had mentioned Amazon Smile. Thank goodness that's gone, and that was always not a great thing. They shut that down. But the simplest thing, I think, is to give directly to the organization and not to put strings on it. Not to say, oh, this is only for your work in Pennacook.
Okay.
Or this is only for your work with a particular population. Just trust them.
Any thought, before we go on to the next topic, which is, there's some myths about giving. But first, like United Way, is there anything that they have a directed giving category, which I think is not because they particularly want to have that, but it's because they feel like they might get a few more dollars from folks. But is there anything to, versus giving through United Way versus giving directly to some specific organization?
Yeah, I have to tread carefully here, not because I don't want to offend anybody, but because some of these these choices are a little complex. When I was much younger, and I was running a small human service organization, the money from United Ways was so critical to us, and it's one of those sources for core human services. And back in the day, United Ways would have an extensive review process. They still do, but they would really kick the tires and really look into the organizations, and then they say, okay, we from this community, assuming we raise the money we want, will be giving that organization $28,000.53, and everybody giving to United Way would know that. One of the trends that's happened over recent decades is much more of a donor choice situation, and United Ways have pursued that. So they say, okay, you don't like any of our core organizations, but if you want to give to someone else, you can funnel it through us. And I'm not sure I know how I feel about that, because it's kind of like it's different from how United Ways used to work. But I will say this: United Ways raise a lot of money, largely through workplace giving, that otherwise would not be raised to give to those core organizations. So I'm supportive of their process and their efforts. And if I were giving to United Way, quite honestly, I would say, here you go, guys. I trust you to divide it up. You could have my $20 a week from my paycheck. You could divide it up among these core causes as you see fit. And if I also like an organization that's outside of your realm, I'll just send them a check directly.
Okay. Now, one of the things that you sometimes see, or sometimes people will say, is, "Oh, I look up what the administrative overhead is of an organization, and if it's too high, I'm not going to give them. I'm not going to give my money there." And is that a myth of smart giving?
Yeah. I think there are a couple of things going on here, Dan. I'm glad you brought it up. One is, part of it is the way organizations report annually to the IRS. It's not really a tax return because charities don't pay taxes, but it's a 990 return.
Yep.
A very extensive return, and I think it's Schedule 9 or something. Breaks down your costs into program-related expenses, management and general expenses, and fundraising expenses. And it's a logical kind of way to do it, but the exact numbers there really shouldn't matter as much as they do, because people look at that and they say, "Oh, I'm not giving to them because they spend 35% of their, that's too much they're spending on management and fundraising." Or you might say, "Oh, this is great. They spend hardly anything on fundraising." And I think, first of all, those numbers, you could play with those numbers and jimmy them a little bit if you're the nonprofit. But the other thing is, I don't know, I have a phone, and it's a Samsung. I don't call Samsung and say, "Hey guys, how much did you spend on advertising, and how much did you spend on management and parties and everything else?" I don't say that. I just say, "Okay, this is a good phone for the price. I'll pay the money." And we subject nonprofits to this weird sort of litmus test where they have to spend nothing on overhead. Well, overhead might be the training that the staff needs to do the job well. It might be some of the salaries that the staff need so we could retain the staff so they could do the job well. And to give to an organization that seems to be, or spending money so you could raise more money so you could have more impact. So I would not get hung up on those statistics. And the problem is there are several third-party evaluators. The most well-known is Charity Navigator. And they look at those numbers and they draw conclusions and they say, "Oh, compared to other organizations of its type, they're spending 2% more on overhead." Maybe I'm sensitive because I spent most of my life as overhead, Dan, but I feel in the nonprofit world. But Charity Navigator, which has a base in New Jersey, really doesn't know whether this organization in central New Hampshire is accomplishing much, or is accomplishing a lot or a little. They really don't know.
It's really about impact.
It's really about impact, and they say they measure impact. They really don't. And I have done some presentations on this, and I've interviewed people at Charity Navigator and the Better Business Bureau, Wise Giving, whatever it is, and Charity Watch. None of them, I could guarantee the viewers today that they know more about Concord nonprofits than any of these national agencies. And if you don't know, you could ask somebody on their board or a neighbor, and you could find out.
So is that so are those kind of measures, do they factor in your decision at all, a little bit?
Do they for me?
Well,
or should they for a donor?
Should they be for a donor?
I really don't think so. I really don't. I was doing a keynote address in Minnesota. It's safe to talk about this because nobody from Minnesota is watching this. There were 400 people there, and they were so nice. They were all from Minnesota. They're nice people. And I said, all nonprofit leaders, and I was giving this keynote, and I was talking about this. I said, how many people here think that Charity Navigator, this great see-all, knows-all evaluator, that the Charity Navigator's evaluations have validity? And not a single hand went up.
Oh, wow.
400 people in the room. Then I said, How many people here have gotten a 4-star rating, which is the top rating at Charity Navigator, and put that on the front page of your website? And people very sheepishly raise their hand because donors see that, it seems like validation, but in and of itself, it really doesn't mean much. And I, in fact, was once talking to somebody who was on the board of an organization, and she said, I cut back what I gave because they got only a 2-star rating from Charity Navigator. And the reasons, I looked into the reasons, and they were silly and totally specious.
So it kind of goes back to, kind of what you said earlier, though, a little bit about if you give locally, you have a little more of you have more of an ability to assess the value or the impact of the organization, and more magnitude that your gift can have more of a
more impact.
More impact. And the other thing is that are they doing work that you feel is really important? Right. I guess those are things that we want to be thinking about. And I guess the other thing is if you get a solicitation a week after you donated to the organization, don't take it too hard on them, right?
Yeah, that can be really aggravating, and you have to realize these are. So here's the thing. I went off on a bit of a rant about worrying too much about how much you spend on fundraising, but sometimes the same folks who want the fundraising budget to be tiny get very offended when a letter comes in asking for money a week after they gave. And that's because they don't have the staff and the systems to stay on top of it. 95% of the organizations I see are doing really good work, working hard, and their systems are not perfect. Yeah.
So do you have any thoughts about planned giving or legacy giving as something to do?
I have a lot of thoughts. This is remembering organizations and your will and your estate plans.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, we're not giving investment or financial advice, but I will speak to the psychology of the retired person, because my wife is retired and I'm easing into it. What you always hear from your financial advisor, or you hope to hear, is, Dan, you're going to be fine as long as you watch what you spend. And I think we've all heard that.
Yep.
And we hope it's true, and consequently, we watch what we spend. What's interesting is that there are a lot of, really middle-class people who watch what they spend. They might be able to write some $50, $100 checks, maybe a little bit more, but they're not high-rolling donors. But they have a house in New Hampshire that they paid for 10 years ago. They have their retirement funds. They have assets. And we really don't need them once we're gone. And so I've seen many times people who are $50 annual donors. Then in their estate plan, they leave 20% of their assets to a local organization. And it turns out to be $600,000. So these people are not large donors. So it's incredibly simple to do, and to just, obviously it's more complicated if you have children and grandchildren and heirs, and you need to support them. You want to support them. But if you don't, or if you have enough, that you can also say, and I would like to give 10% to this organization and 10% to that organization. Yeah. It can be significant, and it's quite simple. So I would encourage people, if you're one of these people, and I'm one of them, who says, when people say, thank you for your gift, and I say, I wish it could have been more. The way it can be more is by putting the organization into your estate plans. Yeah. And there are here in Little Concord, there are $1 million bequests that are coming to small organizations, or $10,000 or $500,000 bequests, significant dollars that are making a huge difference for those organizations.
No, that's a great point. We probably are running low on time.
Okay, that's not a reference to estate planning.
No, no, we got time.
We got time.
We got time personally. We're not
yeah.
going anywhere. But and maybe it doesn't really need saying. I mean, thinking about giving and volunteering, there's real scientific evidence that it's medically good for you. Makes you feel good, and it can lower your blood pressure and stress, and you secrete all the feel-good hormones for doing that.
Yeah.
And you're helping your community, and in a way, you're also making your life, your community better, which is, I mean, it goes without saying, I guess, but.
That's right. I mean, it feels good, and that is good, and to be, particularly for people who are both volunteers and donors.
Yes.
One of the researchers called it the warm glow.
Yeah.
When you are a participant in charity.
Yeah.
And I'm not a scientist, so all the secretions are good ones.
Yeah. and the thing about volunteering is it gives you an inside look at presumably a nonprofit that you're working with, and that may give you a reason to also make a financial donation, because you actually see how it's spent and how it's having an impact on the community. So I do think we have done some programs on volunteering and different things, and so it's nice to tie the two together. That's about all we have time for. Thank you for joining us on Senior Speak. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks very much, Dan. I appreciate it. Thank you all.